Welcome to the Inspiring Veterans Podcast with your host, Gary Rohmann. In each episode of the Inspiring Veterans Podcast, veterans coach Gary Rohmann invites veterans and professionals who support veterans to discuss the process of transitioning out of armed service into civilian society. The Inspiring Veterans Podcast aims to answer the question, what's next? You can find the show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, GaryRohmann.com. Now here's the host of the Inspiring Veterans Podcast, your host, Gary Rohmann.
Good morning, all. Again, this is Gary Rohmann, the Veterans Coach. I hope you had a tremendous and meaningful Memorial Day. I know I did. I tried to avoid the barbecues and all that, but only because I wanted to focus on those that served in our military that are no longer with us. I'm a military brat, and many times I have not served. I have not wore the uniform. I lived through my dad. He was in the Air Force for 23 years. The foundation for my life was laid through him. Unfortunately, he's not with us today. He, as I said, was in the Air Force 23 years. And, it's unfortunately Memorial Day has become more of a, you might say, celebration day, family gatherings and being with people we love, which is great. And I've enjoyed being with my family. But at the same time, it's designed to remember those that served our great country. And so I hope you had a meaningful Memorial Day, and always thankful for those who have served our great country and who are no longer with us. I'm really honored today to have our special guest, Nate Schindler. Nate and I were crossed paths about maybe 3 years ago, maybe not quite that long, but Nate and I were able to meet each other as a result of the work that we did in the Honor Foundation, which is a foundation designed to help Special Forces veterans to transition from their most important assignment to a new assignment in their career, beginning their civilian career. And so Nate, I was able to coach in the Honor Foundation cohort 68. And during that 15-week together, we really got to know each other very well. And our friendship and relationship has continued to this day. So I thought Nate would be a perfect person I'd love to interview. And more importantly, I haven't talked to Nate in, I hope it's not been a year, but I know it's been several months since we last had our conversation. So Nate, good morning to you and welcome.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm doing outstanding. It's so good to hear your voice and see your face. So Nate, as I go through you, I had a big file on you. I don't know. It was a big file that we were able to put together back when we were in cohort 68. But Nate has been in special operations for over 20 years. He enlisted in 2004. And so, Nate, I'll let you kind of give any other background you would like to give about your military experience and share your journey that you were able, and quite frankly, was part of. It's very, as I look at some of my information, you've had a tremendous career, my friend.
It's been interesting for sure. Again, happy Memorial Day too. I had a nice relaxing weekend and I feel pretty good going into this. I was actually just writing a bio for another organization that I'm working with, but kind of reminded me of some things that I did 20 years ago. So I dropped out of college in 2003 because I said, hey, I want to go fight Saddam Hussein. I felt the patriotic bug after 9/11. And at 18, I joined something called the Special Forces Program. I'm at the recruiter going, what's that? I don't know, but it's got a $5,000 bonus if I do it. Fast forward to 2 years later, I'm a 20-year-old Green Beret, and I'm heading off to a place called Iraq. And I actually stayed within this same unit for 20 18 years, two years in the qualification course, and then 18 years in this organization, 10th group in Colorado. And it's been a whirlwind for sure. I spent essentially half my life or a little more doing this job, and I've enjoyed mostly every bit of it,
So what inspired you? Special forces not for everybody, and very few are able to make it, you might say. What inspired you to become one of the elites, you might say?
Well, my story is not as maybe as imposing as others, but I'm at the recruiter thinking, man, I should go to college part-time and do Army part-time, because I had ingrained in my head that I needed education beyond high school to be considered smart and successful in the world. Well, I go to the recruiter and I ask, hey, National Guard, that allowed me to go to school. What do you got for me? He said, well, you can be a plumber. I'm like, plumber? I don't know about that. What do you have in the reserves? Like, well, you could be a cop in military police. At that point, me and cops didn't jive, just because I liked underage drinking. And they said, well, or you could be a bridge crew member. Like, bridge crew? Okay, well, I'm studying to be an engineer. Maybe that'd be something interesting. What do you got in active duty? So, well, you can do something called special forces. That sounds better than being a plumber. What's that about? I really didn't have anything in mind going into it. I just knew that I had a lot of teenage hormones that said I wanted to fight something. So of all those options they gave me, it sounded like I could get into the fight the quickest with something called special forces. So I had to do research in order to even know what that was. And to be fair, I didn't really know what it was until several years into my military service.
Wow, that's amazing. So you were in 20 years. As you look back at your experiences, anything, and can you share maybe one or two of your biggest challenges that you face while you're in the military?
Sure. An interesting ethereal kind of concept is the why you serve. Part of what the Honor Foundation helped you figure out is the why, in terms of who you are outside of your work and what makes you tick. But while you're serving, my reasons for fighting change. It started with 9/11 patriotism, do my part, action junkie type thing. And then it slowly evolved through many deployments and friends' deaths, and, peering behind the curtain of the business of war that is really just now, years into it, just doing it for those on my left and right, to keep them alive and bring them home and keep all my bits and pieces intact as well. So the challenge, I suppose, was, challenging your identity. Do you still want to continue fighting and being tired and hungry and cold and wet for patriotism and, Islamic extremism, or is it something else? So as I matured, so did my reasons for doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I was reading your why statement on your LinkedIn profile, and I remember when we went through this in the class. And may I read your why statement?
Please.
All right. I creatively inspire exploration, and together we create a stronger outcome. And then below it, you said, what that means, I think creatively within chaos. I bring calm to disorder and articulate the solution and next steps, so that together we embrace a growth mindset and improve the situation in our future. That's it to a T.
Yeah, I find that interesting, and a lot. That's where that applies. Even just yesterday, Memorial Day camping, we took the car out to the woods and got a campsite, and one of the kids decided to be hormonal last night and go in the car to cry and pout, and decided to leave the lights on and the headlights on so they could feel comfortable. And lo and behold, today the car didn't work, no battery. So finding solutions without panic and placing blame excessively. I had to walk a couple miles and find another car that could come jump us. But all the time, it was more just problem solving.
Yeah. So you were in you transitioned out in 2020. Is that correct?
No, this year I'm just now retiring. In fact, today I was with my VA counselor to get my rating.
Wow. Forgive me for not knowing that. I was just looking at your LinkedIn profile, but so your official transition date was when again?
I've been a civilian since I suppose maybe 2 months. Yeah.
Awesome. So how's it feel? The reason I ask you that
Yeah.
is, one of the challenges that I've seen as I've coached special forces is they have a hard time identifying their new mission because in many ways you had the highest, most challenging mission that anyone can have, and you did it for 20 plus years. So I know it's only been a couple months now, but how do you feel at this point in time?
Um, Good overall. The chaos of mentally transitioning, besides paper transitioning, you have to mentally transition. The chaos happened for me about 2 years, year and a half ago. That started my pivot towards something else besides constantly going somewhere far away and doing bad things to bad people. So I've already mentally transitioned, so I'm in a good place, and luckily I've got family to reinforce that.
So, and again, I know since I know you personally, I know
I'm
that.
happy to share anything. Yeah,
Excuse me.
I'm happy to talk about and share anything.
Okay. So I know several years ago your wife passed away, and while you were still enlisted, and I know during that period it had to be challenging. And as you were, you have a family as well, and you were trying to determine your why and next steps, and so you had a lot on your plate at that time. Can you talk any about that, or
Of
again, I
course.
don't want to go ahead.
No, of course. I'm happy to. So I was serving as a free fall team sergeant. So we have organized into 12-man teams called ODAs, Operational Attachment Alphas. And I was having fun and jumping ahead of airplanes and blowing stuff up. And my wife of 10 plus years, who by all accounts was doing fine on paper, GS 14, I believe, equivalent, working as a defense contractor, decided to take her life one morning suddenly in our house. So pivoting towards just family instead of work was interesting. The analogy I give is that work and life for me was a yin yang balance. When both were in harmony, great, life is good. When work was suffering, I relied on home for support. And when home stunk, I relied on work and working out to deal with that stress. And then all of a sudden, both were out of balance because home life was, in flux, and I couldn't, in good conscience, be a combat leader for special forces while I'm distracted with this family event. So about a month after she died, I had to officially give the chat to my crew that I can either be a okay team sergeant, an okay dad, or I can be a full-time dad and let go of this position of responsibility. So I chose family. And because I chose family, I chose not to do anything more dangerous to jeopardize my kids being, orphans, especially so soon after the mom died. So that was my chaos, was mentally transitioning from something that I've done since I was a teenager and still enjoyed. And now, being Mr. Mom, that was an interesting and challenging adventure.
So I mean that's again, I mean life throws a lot at us, and of course, I can experience reflect on some of the things I've gone through in my life. Of course, 71 years, you do experience quite a bit, and I've had some very traumatic personal situations, but nothing that would equal what you just shared. And I'm just continue more to be admired by your ability to overcome and not be defined by the situation in and of itself. And that goes, I'm sure a lot of that is based on your training and how to find a solution, not to say never give up and so forth, but that's truly amazing part of your journey right now. As I looked at your profile, I noticed you're now, what is it, Director of Operations at this foundation. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So as I've tried to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, so to speak. Um, I applied to dozens of jobs and got some good feedback. There was a lot of jobs where it offer, 200K ish, sitting in a dark room, talking about top secret stuff. And I'd be gone from the house for 10, 12. I'd probably get all fat, and lazy, and upset. So I had to do some critical thinking in my head and say, what actually inspires me? So one of the things with the wife dying is pivoting towards mental health and physical health and how those two things overlap to either make or break you. So about a year ago, I went on a trip to Florida with a group, non stagger, and they were able to bring my girlfriend at the time and her kids and my kids, and it was a great melting pot of emotions that we could have a shared experience and work together towards creating a family. I've got two autistic kids. My girlfriend, now common law wife, is a special needs teacher. It was fortuitous and really good fit, not just on paper, but our personalities and parenting style. So I've found comfort, happiness, and the future with her and her family. The Task Force Dagger, maybe a month or so, 2 months ago, I was hiring for a position. Jenny, my lady's name, she was able to get on board as the program director of programs, and she's able to dole out assistance and help to veterans and their families. And I've been doing that unpaid, helping friends and family and random veterans with mental health. I don't want to say band-aids, but alternatives to psychoactive drugs given by psychiatrists, and alternatives to looking for the answer in the bottom of a bottle, or finding a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I've actually enjoyed just sharing my journey with others. Hey, this worked for me, or let me just tell you some anecdotes that I've seen personally work with others. And it's rewarding. It's nice to help others if you're at a good spot to be able to help people outside your family. I'm in a good spot mentally. I'm sitting in a L-shaped or a T-shaped desk where I work and she works, and I hear her on the phone all day, hearing these firsthand stories of families that are falling apart because of, I don't want to say veteran instability, but something's going on in that veteran family that is not great. And sometimes the veteran has the PTS, sometimes the wife does, sometimes the kids do. And she's able to dole out support in many different fashions, means. And I'm really appreciative that I can be a part of that. My job within Task Force Dagger as a volunteer is to help out with what's called the Joint Recovery Team mission. And what that is Task Force Dagger aligns with some federal agencies to go recover shipwrecks and plane wrecks that crashed into the oceans or littoral waters around some conflict zone, find the site and repatriate the remains so that the service members, plural, can be moved from missing in action to killed in action, to give the family some closure on their grandpa, great grandpa. And really, it's a mission that you bring veterans on to give them a sense of purpose. Gary, a second ago, you were talking about like finding that sense of purpose. Yeah. Well, one interesting thing about Task Force Dagger's JRT mission is that you can bring injured or uninjured veterans and give them something greater than themselves to work towards and amongst other special operations veterans. That's a cool feeling.
That's amazing. Again, as I've been involved in, as you probably know, the veteran community for about 10 years now. And I do transition workshops for those that are getting out of the military, in addition to the work I do at the Honor Foundation. And a sense of mission is big. And
Yeah.
really that is one of that's their biggest challenge, I think. And is finding that new mission. And how to help veterans process the things they've went through. And veterans handle it in a lot of different ways. I'm just this amazing work that you're doing. How old's the foundation?
They've been around for 10 plus years. I think 2009, top of my head, was when they were founded. And the namesake Task Force Dagger refers to the invasion of Afghanistan, the Special Operations Task Force. And some of the founders were on that mission and other missions that were going alongside it.
Wow. And it's all funded through donations. Is that correct?
Yes. The primary source of resources to help all the veterans is donations. Now, when doing the Joint Recovery Team missions, a lot of those missions are primarily funded through federal funds. To the main federal agencies, the DPAA, and they do things on land and in the water to bring back our people.
Wow. Well, that's something we could talk about all day, because I recently was listening to a podcast by Sean Ryan. I don't know if you ever heard of his name or not.
Oh, yeah.
He's a former Navy SEAL, and he has a tremendous podcast. And he interviewed Tom Spooner, I think.
Satterley.
Are you familiar with his foundation?
Was it Tom Satterley?
Yeah.
Yes, the All Secure Foundation. Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad you know it.
We had a booth, couple booths down from them at the Soft Week in Tampa a couple weeks ago.
And it was kind of dedicated to to help veterans that had some form of addiction and needed treatment, needed a special location to. It's not only about treatment; it's also about support, ongoing counseling around people that you served with, which makes a big difference, because it's a whole different perspective on their challenge, and to be around other veterans that are going through the same challenge. So I would imagine there's some spinoffs here, but man, that you're doing amazing work. I'm so glad to hear. I didn't know about it until I checked out your LinkedIn profile in preparation for today. That's terrific.
My my aperture, I thought I had a pretty wide aperture in the sense of worldly things, but the veteran community resources are deep. There is a lot. And my exposure so far has only been to really the special operations focused foundations, which are numerous. I think I saw 35 plus special operations dedicated veteran organizations that are mostly just a group of volunteers trying to help others. I'm not the only one that's been touched by suicide. There's plenty others, but I take the proactive approach as opposed to reactive. So if I can phone a friend and say, hey, there's a opportunity for you to stave off disaster, off that addiction or that dark hole you're going into, let's go do this thing instead, whatever it may be. And I like that approach from all these nonprofits, is that 99% of them are all there to help others. And that's a cool feeling.
Yeah. So you've been doing that for what it looks like about 3 or 4 months now?
Yeah, I had my first interaction about a year ago, and then I signed on, I believe, in March to head this particular program.
It's outstanding.
I'm by no means an expert in it. I'm still getting my feet wet, so to speak. So,
well, it's all about continuously getting better, continuously learning. You obviously, from my perspective, bring a depth of experience just in what you've gone through yourself. Now it's a matter of being able to share it in various different ways, different platforms, and learning, the best way to communicate, so forth, so on. So And I will say this, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but when we first connected, we had a difficult time communicating. At least I thought we did. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? Or, but it evolved. And again, I know you had so much to share and everything. And it's a step-by-step process. You got to gain trust, right? You got to, and that takes time. And you got to, have that trust along with integrity and that goes with it for people to be able to open up to you. And I know that's a process. Would you agree?
I would. With the Honor Foundation specifically, what you're catching service members at a very interesting time in their life where there's a lot of unknowns. So the injection of another unknown of, hey, here's your coach, in a strange way, nobody's had a coach while they're in the service. They have mentors that they attach to or were assigned, and they have subordinates that they try and give information to, so they're mentors themselves. But if you take that 20-year transitioning service member and say, hey, here's your coach, tell them all about you, and you're going to hold your hand, that is an interesting part because there's a bit of hesitancy of, well, I know about me better than you do. And what maybe bravado of, I can figure this out because I've had to figure out things for so long. There's no roadmap to success in the military other than, show up at the right place, the right time, in the right uniform. That can only get you so far. So I liked the Honor Foundation. I liked working with you because it got you out of your comfort zone and said, hey, hard-headed guy, you're going to start doing something else soon. Forget all the shiny, blowy uppy things. Get ready for LinkedIn profiles and interviews and resumes. It's a different world. So I thank you for powering through, working with me and others.
Well, it was definitely another one of those experiences I learned from, and I've applied things that we experienced, and as I've coached others. Coaching is, we don't have the answers. That's not the reason. Purpose of a coach, and from my perspective, a coach's purpose is to ask the right questions. And the other aspect of that is to hold the person accountable for things that they say they're going to do, or but it's a very, very special bond. It takes, I think, it's all about it for me, at least. It's, you can only get better, and I certainly got better as a result of working with you and the things we experience. So as you look at your future, of course, you don't want to live in the past, but you want to live in the present. But what do you see yourself and your family in 5 years? Have any thoughts on that you could share?
Sure. Well, between us, we have 4 kids, 13, 10, 8, 6. 2 are impacted with, being on the spectrum, and 2 are impacted from their father's physical abuse. So I see us melding more. I'd love to move out of the city. I think that being in the trees, the woods somewhere is my zen spot, not stuck in traffic and going to chain restaurants. I am doing my master's right now at Johns Hopkins. So post that, I should have found something that inspires me and my lady to help others. We've talked about starting a nonprofit and creating a retreat or something, but the logistics of that are still nebulous. So short answer, my long range planning calendar is fuzzy just because I've got a lot of variables and most of them are kids.
Yeah. Oh, can you give the ages of your kids?
13, 10, 8, 6.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely, yeah.
Teenage
Each one
hormones.
of,
Here we go.
yeah. So, hope, I have a pretty, Well, I believe I have a pretty strong veteran community. It grows every day. I'm doing transition workshops every week. And from your perspective, any advice you would be willing to share for those that are transitioning out, advice to help them prepare better?
Sure. I give the stump speech a couple times a week. First is get ready because it's going to be a whirlwind and time is not your friend. So the sooner you can start 2 years out ish, the better. And what does start mean? That means getting your medical figured out. And the tempo here, at least in my unit, which is good, is about a month per issue. For example, turn your knee pain into a diagnosable issue instead of, oh, my knee hurts sometimes. Okay, talk to your primary care, go get an appointment, get imagery. So if you want an MRI, here you have to get an X-ray first and then MRI, then you have to discuss results, then you have to discuss treatment. So about a month start to finish between, ow, my joint hurts to I have a diagnosable condition. I think last year I had 15 MRIs and a
Wow.
complementary number of X-rays. So start early. The next is get a VSO or Veteran Service Organization to help you. They are going to be, if you get a good one, they're going to be the ones that are thumping you to say, hey, Mo Frappy, I need you to go do X, Y, Z, because they speak VA, they speak the separating service member. And they're going to be able to see the future, which you can't see yet because you've never had to transition or you've never had to retire before, likely. So get that veteran service organization in your corner. I use Green Beret Foundation and Wounded Warrior Project, both local resources, both great. And they can help start get some vernacular in your head that you're not used to that will be very important once you're out. VA talk. The next would be life insurance. So you don't need life insurance, but if you would like it, and if you have someone that could use it in your absence, make sure you get that very early too, at least a year out, maybe more. Because once your VA rating hits and once the life insurance folks can see that, oh my God, you've accumulated all this pain and misery in your body and your brain, maybe we shouldn't cover you for life insurance. Or if we do, you're going to pay a pretty penny. So get that started early. Mine is $50 a month, and the kids will be taken care of if I were to depart early. So those three things: start early, get a VSO, and get life insurance if you need it.
Well, those are tremendous suggestions. It reminds me again of this podcast, your first one that you mentioned about your medical and testing and all that. Well, this Tom Spooner, I mean, he was. I think he was in close to 30 years or so, but one of his things he was challenged with is, he knew he had some issues going on, but he couldn't put his finger on them. And so one of the things they said he should do is go through this testing to determine how his brain was functioning. It was a lot of tests, but the results were indisputable. So he went through all that, and they advised him that his brain was functioning at a 50% capacity. It was all due to war, and I think he had 12 deployments or something like that. But then when he got the results, he felt relieved. I know what's wrong now, and I can do something about it. And so many times I think a lot of veterans don't know what's wrong and what's causing it. And so therefore they can't find a solution, or their solution is probably things that are really not going to solve it. So I really appreciate you sharing that first one. I think that's very key.
Yeah. Time sneaks up on us.
Excuse me?
Time tends to sneak up on us all.
Yeah. Well, Nate, excuse me. Is there anything that, as we wrap this up, you like any of the last minute shares, or how can how can maybe how we can support the foundation or provide any information about that. But any last minute things you'd like to share before we sign off?
Sure. I'd like to say to any veteran families listening, whether it's the service member themselves or the spouse or kids, is that oftentimes we veterans, we active duty folks don't see the clouds, starting to gather. It just becomes the new normal. We don't know any different because that, we'll call it the darkness, the shade from the clouds, sometimes creeps in slow. And when that happens, it's insidious and it's harder to detect versus, oh my God, he came back and now he's a jerk. And, I can directly point to this point when he or she changed. So those slow brewing ones, those are tough to spot. So what I ask everyone that I talk to, I say, I ask two questions to get started. What's the last fun thing you did? Because that's a good gauge of whether they're having any happiness in their life. And the next I say is what you're doing working. And it's not accusative, either of those things. It's like you said, it's just questions to be self-reflective. But if what they're doing is working, great. I'm not going to suggest anything over the top or say, great, I'm glad it's working. I've tried these other stuff. They work for me. Have you tried any of the same? But if their answer comes back a little muddled or flat out no, or they start to cry, which happens, that's when it's a good time to reach out to your buddy and say, maybe we should get you some help. And what I like about Task Force Stagger and the dozens of other organizations is that they exist just to help. So the first step is kind of like AA, admitting you have a problem. Hey, my name's Nate. I get angry when I drive, or something like that. Once you can self-admit, then you can accept resources to help you and not just keep them at a distance. So I like those things.
Outstanding. Well, Nate, I want to thank you for your time today. So good to talk to you, in many ways for us, each other to catch up, but also to share the information with whoever listens to this podcast. And I would like to just simply say, Nate, if I can help you in any way as you continue your journey, you know how to get in touch with me. We're friends for life. And I definitely appreciate everything you're doing and wish you all the best.
Thanks, bud. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
You've been tuning into the Inspiring Veterans Podcast with your host, Gary Rohmann. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, GaryRohmann.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.